Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another DC comic review, and these are the comics for the third week of January of 2022 that I'll be reviewing. And as you can see here, we have Nightwing, Aquaman, The Becoming, covering Jackson Hyde, and last but not least, Mariko Tamaki's Detective Comics, to which I will not be covering the backstory on it, just to give you a heads up. So now it's time to jump into the first comic that will be reviewed, and that will be Nightwing. So first things first, let's jump into the cover rating. Does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? Sure enough, it does, and to which I give the cover a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to jump into the internal art, which we'll get to see some of the art around the beginning, middle, and of course the end, as well as covering some of the things that are happening in the story. So, jumping into some of the art around the beginning of the story, and I will say one thing, it is really nice to see some indication of locations in this story. Something that's sort of been missing, and I'd really like to see more of, especially with Tom Taylor. As you know, he can write some somewhat good things, but a lot of it's over in his Elseworld storytelling, and he can get a number of hit and misses in his DC canon storytelling. So this is some of the art around the beginning, and as we can see here, we've got Blockbuster. And of course we know where this is happening, which is really nice. And of course he's got plans to take out Dick Grayson. Of course we see Oracle. So now to jump towards the middle. And as we jump towards the middle of the story, we have Mr. Terrific making an appearance, one of the Flashes making an appearance. But they're not the only characters that are making an appearance here. Alright, and last but not least, towards the end, to which we have the return of Heartless. It's definitely a metaphor for Tom Taylor. So, for this art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to jump into the story. And I'm quite surprised with the rating I actually gave this story. I do feel it improved a little bit over some of his past ones. So starting off with first things first, did we get any comic references to any previous issues that might be of importance? No, but it would not have hurted to include them, including maybe a comic reference to the first appearance of Heartless. Not only that, also a comic reference to the previous issue, which would have been 87. I believe would have helped this story, as it would have raised the rating of the story higher. About the only time, now moving into the next thing, was the area of time, to which we only got the lazy writing of later. Why not be a little bit more descriptive and maybe give us an indication of what time later is? Is later, I don't know, 1 p.m. Going into the afternoon? Is it 2 p.m.? Is it 5 p.m.? Is it starting to go into the evening? When exactly is that later? And of course, as you also noted, I'll be reviewing the Detective Comics one. You'll be surprised to know that Mariko Tamaki actually had that stuff covered in one of the comics that she recently put out. So, and that tears a right big hole in Tom Taylor's hiney. Enough said. Moving into the locations. The next thing that I also enjoy in stories, because it lets me know where the characters are going. And not only that, it also lets the readers know where the characters are going, or will be seeing scenes from. Of course, this takes place in Bloodhaven, where Dick Grayson stays. Then we have the Tower of Roland Desmond, aka Blockbuster, which I thought was really nice to see that shown in the story. And we, of course, had Dick Grayson's apartment, and we moved to the docks of Bloodhaven. And I thought that was really nice too, and it was really good to see that included in the story. The characters that show, or the character cast that showed up in the story, we of course had Nightwing, we had Blockbuster, we had Oracle, and on top of the Oracle we also had the Teen Titans, which was really good to see in this. So basically getting the whole family involved. Or Dick Grayson's new family involved. We also had Mr. Terrific, Heartless, and one more other character. Well, I'll have to leave it for the time being and move into the story reading. Well, after going through this story and what was happening in the story, we know that in the previous issue that Blockbuster has started to order a hit on Dick Grayson. So Dick Grayson manages to get a little bit of help from the Teen Titans, plus Mr. Terrific, plus a couple of others. And it was really nice to see that, because it shows how his mind works in a situation to which he might be under threat, especially with being Nightwing, yes, but also when being Dick Grayson, when he can be a little bit more vulnerable. So, for the overall story rating, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move on to the next one. So moving into the next comic that I'm reviewing, and that is Aquaman the Becoming, covering Jackson Hyde on his road to, well, basically learning to become the next Aquaman. And this story has been quite interesting. So starting off with first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? Sure enough, it does, to which I give it a 7 out of 10. I'll now show some of the internal art, as well as be able to see some of the things that are happening inside of the story. Starting now. And we'll be looking at things around the beginning, middle and end, like the previous comic. So starting off with the beginning, this takes place in the area of Jebel, under the sea. And of course we have the characters of Lucia and Mika. And this is in one of the areas that we went to in the last issue, in issue 4, or went past in, I think it was issue 3, 4-ish. And trust me, it would not hurt to include the comic reference for this, but I'll get to that later. And one thing I still like about this era is how these gravestones are done. Of course, there's a little bit of talk. I'll now jump towards the middle. As we jump towards the middle, we've got Jackson Hyde along with Delilah. And we also learn that something else is also happening, which connects to his mother. And last but not least, towards the end. So, for the internal art, I gave this a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to jump to the story rating. So first things first, did we get any comic references? No, but it would not have. It would have helped to include at least a couple of them. as I brought up before, maybe in relation to, I think it was issues 2, 3 or 4. I think it really would have worked well in regards to the area to which the characters were talking at the beginning. Then we move into the area of time, to which, again, I felt like Brandon Thomas was being a little bit lazy, and he used soon. I think that could have been better, sort of like maybe 30 or 50 minutes later, or an hour or two later. The location, of course, linking to Atlantis. The locations that showed up were Jebel and also the Capitol building. I wonder what that's about. I think we might know why, but the way it's being developed in the story, it's actually coming off better than most current news stations that have lost their agenda and lost their audience. The cast of characters consisting of Lucia, Mika, Jackson Hyde, Delilah, and of course, last but not least, his mother. Overall story rating, a 7 out of 10. I'll now jump to the last comic that I'll be reviewing, and that is the Detective Comics 1049. So now it's time to move into the Mariko Tamaki Detective Comics Batman 1049. And as we start to make a start on this, I of course got the covers to rate and how they connect to the story. So first things first, do these covers connect any way, shape or form in relation to the story? Sure enough, they both do in their own way, to which we give the first cover here a 7 out of 10. But you know what, I really like the variant cover here, and I gave it an 8.5. In fact, I enjoyed this cover more than the regular, more than the trade press version. So now it's time to jump into the story, to which I'll be covering around the beginning, middle, and end. I will not be covering the backstory, to which the backstory is actually quite interesting if you want to check out for yourself. And I'll use the variant to show the art around the beginning, middle, and end, and we'll show you some of the things that are happening with the story. So this is some of the art around the beginning, and as you can see here, we're covering a little bit of a flashback of some events that took place, and we're being brought back to the Arkham Tower, to which we meet Anna, who's gone to see the counselor. And I'll now jump towards the middle. As we jump towards the middle, we got someone else who's going to one of the offices that are in Arkham Tower. And we move into Cassandra Kane, who's also watching over some of the things that are happening, along with Oracle. And last but not least, some of the things that are happening in the Batcave, as well as some of the discussions too. And also what's happening with some of the clientele that are in the tower. For the art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10, as I really enjoyed it and I felt like it worked with the story. Now it's time to jump into the story rating, to which I'll begin first things first. Did we get any comic references? No, we didn't get any comic references, but did it in any way, shape or form affect the overall story rating in the end? We'll find out when time gets there. Into the area of time, we got years ago, so we got a bit of a flashback which connected Huntress along with Batman in the story, which I really liked. And of course we also had day 14 of what's currently connected to the Arkham Tower story. With the locations, we had Dr. Weir's office, We, of course, of course, still taking place in Gotham City, and we also had the underground Batcave, which was really nice to see, and it's good to see that these areas are being pointed out. The cast of characters consisting of Dr. Meridian, Anna, Batwoman, Dr. Frau, Cassandra Kane, Huntress, and last but not least, Oracle and Nightwing, giving the rating of the story an overall of a 7 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.